We value our relationship with Ukraine because of Ukraine and Ukrainians. That gives us a very firm foundation to build on. What's special about Canada-Ukraine relations is that we're one of the countries where, not because it's in Eastern Europe, not because it's next to Russia, but because everybody in Canada knows someone of Ukrainian background. And people understand that Ukraine has the same right to exist as any other country in the world. The interesting thing about cultures that end up in other countries is that they hang on to certain symbols, maybe even more than sometimes in the homeland. Do I have a vyshyvanka? Have I worn it? Sure. Did we have 12 meatless dishes for Christmas? Yes. But there's also a broader phenomenon. Vakhtang Kipiani, who's spent a lot of time studying, people in Western Canada go for hopak classes like Ukrainians go for tango classes. It's just a part of the things that an interested, there are, in smaller towns in Alberta and Saskatchewan, you have things that are Ukrainian dance and aerobics clubs. There's a national consensus in Canada on this. Well, in Canada, when the vote in the House of Commons, the final vote, happened on the free trade agreement, the result was 304 to nothing. So it was unanimous, no votes against. Last year, we've seen probably just over $100 million in investment into Ukraine. It's largely gone Canadian investment funds that look at Ukrainian companies that have done well. Interesting example is Astarta, biggest sugar producer in Ukraine. A third of it is now owned by a Canadian fund, but they've also helped encourage Astarta to work with an IT company. So I think, as one of my colleagues calls it, you combine brains and grains, and the two big comparative advantages that Ukraine has. So I think that's where investment coming from abroad gives companies more tools. Something like concentrated fruit juice. Ukraine's exports to Canada went up by something like 9,000% this year, which basically means breaking into the market and taking a sizable chunk of it. Metalworking, railway wheels and locomotive parts. There's a lot of stuff that we sell both ways. I noticed that, for example, we sell soy and soya seed. For example, Canadian soya seed is very frost resistant. So farmers in places like Kharkiv Oblast, which has a continental climate, they want that strong seed. Other kinds of Ukrainian seed are cost effective for Canadian consumers. There's a whole range of things that we're up to. Plus we do small projects. One of them is in supporting therapy dog program, Druh Heroya, here in Ukraine, working with both veterans and children with special needs. We have an agriculture project for farmers who are in the conflict zone in the east with the Food and Agriculture Organization, all the way to the western borders of Ukraine, and again, big agricultural project. We've reacted quickly with help on defense and training. The airplanes and the ships, for example, a trauma life-saving course to Ukrainian military National Guard doctors. For the last 2 years, 200 Canadian soldiers in Ukraine all the time, undertaking training, and that's everything from full-spectrum combat training to training Ukrainian military chaplains from various churches on how do you operate in a combat environment. Most of the groups of troops that our Canadian soldiers have helped train have come off the front lines from the Donbass and come back. What I hear from our Canadians is that these are tough, patriotic, brave soldiers, and that our soldiers learn as much from them as they are able to train. That's where we think we have something to contribute, but lots to learn from Ukrainian soldiers and the experiences they've had. No other army in recent decades has had the same experience of fighting what is, when it's active, pretty much a large-scale, conventional, sort of a combination of partly World War I and the 21st century. The conflict has to be dealt with, but it can't be the most important thing about Ukraine. 93% of Ukraine is operating more or less as usual and as normal, ready to receive trade, investment. The place I've been most often is Lviv. But I think really what's been interesting is going to places like Mykolaiv and Kherson, which I didn't know so well. I'm going next week to Valky, Pervomayske, and Kharkiv. So I'm hoping to find some new favorite places. Friends of ours at the embassy had friends of theirs from Quebec who came, spoke not a word of any language here, spent 2 weeks driving around Ukraine from Transcarpathia to Poltava, loved it. Stayed in small towns, either private apartments or small hotels. They said, Ukraine's great. They even learned to drive on the roads, which is a bit of a challenge still, although I must say that last summer I saw more road construction and fixing than before, and I'm hoping to see even more of it this year, because it's important. I was talking to the Minister of Natural Resources a couple of days ago, and he said that after they fix the road, to the small changes can have major impact. They're maybe better able to snap up opportunities as they come up. If you've got a old system, legacy system, you're not going to want to abandon it. Rolled out very quickly and more transparent to the ordinary citizen who's interested, who wants to have a look, than most other systems in the world. The other example would be the national police rollout. From the first idea, because we were part of working on it in January of 2015, the first police were on the streets in July. Frankly, in Canada, that would be the time you would spend on doing a feasibility study, right? Not launching the project, training people, and putting them on the street. Ukrainians, after a revolution, after all the sacrifices, want things to happen right away. But a lot has happened, more needs to happen. As someone who was away, I think in my case for 16 years actually, lots has changed. You've got a whole new generation or a generation and a half of people active here, are very different from the kinds we had in the mid-1990s. You talk to the mayor of Enerhodar, and formerly working at the atomic power plant. Well, he's been on visits to other countries. He has ideas that he's brought back from Europe or from North America on what you could do. 20-something-year-olds who are running government departments based on their education at better business schools than I ever attended. There was this one case, we were on a train, met California, another for a company in Pittsburgh, and at the same time, she was singing virtually in a band in Japan, all from the bedroom of her apartment in Chernivtsi. The most important thing about Ukraine is the people, their hopes, their aspirations, their everyday lives, and their accomplishments.